The very last theme for this first unit, theme of geography, is theme number 5, called movement. And what it focuses on is how people, goods, and ideas get from one place to another. And with geography, we really focus on all of this. How do people move? How do goods get from one place to another? But also, and maybe most importantly, how do ideas spread? So when we look at movement, we're talking specifically about diffusion. Diffusion is probably a term you're familiar with something being spread across a space. And so there's two different types of diffusion that you're going to be responsible for. Number one is relocation diffusion. Relocation diffusion, the root term is relocate. And this is talking about the spread of people, typically. The spread of an idea through the physical movement. So for an idea to spread, or for anything to spread, people have to move. You got to get your butt up, and you got to take it somewhere. So if we're focusing on an idea, if I want my idea to spread, think about the early Christian missionaries or even Muslim missionaries or anybody else who was trying to spread a religion. There was no Twitter, there was no Facebook, there was no YouTube. They wanted that religion to spread. They had to get up, they had to travel, and they had to spread that message. Okay, that's relocation diffusion. As a result of that, it's typically slower moving, and that's about it. It's going to take a longer time for it to spread. The other type is expansion diffusion. Expansion diffusion spreads outward in a snowballing process. Y'all do this every single day, almost every minute of every day. The fact that I'm sitting here teaching you remotely right now from my desk and you're not here is expansion diffusion. I'm not having to get up and take anything anywhere. Increased technology is expansion diffusion. Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok, you guys communicate with people all across the globe at any given moment. That's expansion diffusion. And something spreading outward in a very fast fashion. And all of that ties into this concept known as globalization, which is the process of something going worldwide. But here's the thing, okay? And I'm going to come back to globalization in a second because we're sitting here talking about some good stuff. Spacetime compression is what y'all are taking part in. When you look at this image up here in the top right, I want you to look at something. It took Columbus 37 days in 1492 to sail across the Atlantic Ocean to get to the West Indies. In 1962, roughly 450 years later, it took John Glenn 5 hours to orbit the globe 3 times. Increased technology means that the Earth seems smaller than it used to be. Has it ever changed size? No. China is still the same distance away today that it was 500 years ago. China's actually, I guess you could argue it's easier because they had the Silk Road. Europeans had more access to China. But honestly, we have lots of interaction now with China, and it's because of technology. Whether that's a plane flight that can get you there in 12 to 15 hours, whether that's a phone call, whether that's a FaceTime or anything else, when we have increased interactions with areas, it makes the Earth seem smaller. Good example of this, my brother was in the military right after he got out of high school. Me and my brother are 7 years apart. He's 7 years younger than me, almost 8 years younger than me. And so he went to the military, and in that time, we ended up having our first daughter. And so Avery grew up, separated from her uncle, but she knew who Uncle Daniel was because of FaceTime, because of Skype. She could get on and see who he is and got to recognize his face even before she started talking. He was all the way in Fort Wainwright, Alaska, which was about a 22-hour trip by plane because there was no direct flight. It would have taken me about 2.5 weeks to drive there. But when we would talk on FaceTime and I'd check on him and we'd had conversations or Skype or anything else, he might as well have just been in the next room. Increased interactions and increased technology makes things seem closer than they actually are. And that is space-time compression. So when we talk about that and these increased interactions, it leads to globalization. But one of the biggest, I don't want to say problems because it's not necessarily a problem. For some people it is that globalization creates what is known as uniformity, where everything becomes the same. You look at chain restaurants all over the globe. You'll find McDonald's in every country in the world has a McDonald's. And so things start to look similar and you lose these distinctive characteristics because of globalization. People start to be more similar across the globe because you're all exposed to the same ideas. And so the people that really dislike globalization are those who want to hold on to their distinctive ways of life. And while globalization and space-time compression are a reality, so is distance decay. Distance decay, it states, is the decreasing and eventual disappearance of any aspect or event. That's a very wordy way of simply saying this. The farther away you get from something, the less it's going to affect you. As much of a strain as COVID has put on our lives and on our schooling and on every facet of our country, it's a great case study for a lot of stuff we talk about in this class. Distance decay is one of the first of those. So for example, and globalization. We could say that the reason that COVID spread so fast was because of globalization and increased interaction, space-time compression. However, in early January, when we first started seeing, these COVID cases pop up in China, while it was a big deal to China and we were concerned about it, really wasn't that big of a deal to us yet. It became a bigger deal the closer it got to us. The farther away something is from you, the less it's going to affect you. Okay, but the inverse is true as well. The closer something is to you, the more it's going to affect you. So, two different types of diffusion, relocation, expansion, and that leads to this idea of globalization, space-time compression, and then distance decay. So that's it for our notes for this unit. Please bring any questions you have to our meetings on Wednesday or our Thursday review so that we can go over any of it. And we will stop there.